On this episode, we categorize, order, and evaluate with extreme prejudice. Welcome to Save Every Universe. My name is Alec Garcia. I am a general-purpose robot CL4PTP. I look forward to going somewhere with booze, freedom, and fewer iridium junkies shivving you for spare change.
Nice. I actually got that one. That was good. And my name is Rob. I'm a complicated, advanced, and sexy AI who chose 117 because he was lucky. Was I wrong?
Who were you last week?
Last week I was Tails.
Yeah, that was a really good one.
Yeah,
and I was Six from Little Nightmares, the little girl in the rain slicker that you play as.
Yeah, I haven't played that
You need
game.
to play it.
Yeah, I hear that from you a lot.
Speaking of differences of opinion on very good games, today we're talking about genres, different genres. What are our favorite genres? Problems amongst genres. What have you on the docket today, Robbie?
So I thought maybe the best way to go about this, because it's a little bit of a huge topic, and I wasn't sure where we would differ. So
yeah.
I just went to GameStop. Well, I tried to go to IGN, and I couldn't get like a good thing out of that. I wanted to find just a generic list of what mainstream genres would be. So I just went to GameStop.com and wrote down literally what they say are genres.
Categories of games.
I'm not saying that because I agree with them. I'm just as a starting point.
And that is one of the interesting things, actually, is like I found probably 10 different sources just to see what they said about what defines a genre as a genre in games, and I couldn't find one site that agreed with another site, one source that agreed with another source. So
yeah, so kind of like our episode last week,
anyway.
This is kind of a spawn off from when we were talking from our 20 questions episode, where we were discussing some of the different genres and how we felt about them and how some were our favorite, but we felt this way about it.
And we had talked about how sci-fi, when sci-fi is good, sci-fi is great.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many bad or so-so sci-fi games out there.
Yeah, so that's kind of our I guess starting point, launch point from what kind of spawned this whole episode.
So do you have a favorite genre that you tend to gravitate toward?
Right, so I did mention this in the 20 episodes, or 20 episode questions, 20 questions episode. I do really, really like sci-fi.
Yeah.
I love sci-fi, but there's a lot of so-so, kind of crappy sci-fi out there that I'm not wild about.
Yeah.
And then there's some interesting branches that some people would maybe consider sci-fi that I wouldn't, like the Alien games or Doom. I mean, those are almost sci-fi games, right? But I don't think of them that way. They're almost
lead into just more of a, well, I mean, like Alien Isolation is like a hybrid of survival horror.
Right.
And sci-fi. Doom would be more of like just a shooter, a good old-fashioned shooter with horror
or
elements.
Dead Space is and that's probably closer to being a sci-fi, but it's still kind of like a horror.
It's a sci-fi survival horror adventure game. Like, so many games now blend multiple genres. It's not
I'm okay
pure,
with that.
like this is a platformer, this is a simulator, like it used to be back in the day.
Right, and I'm okay with that, but I think, just for the record, GameStop didn't list sci-fi as one of its considered genres.
Right.
So
because there's almost two categories. There's genres of mechanics, right? Or style of play or whatever, first person or platformer or top down. And then there's the genre of more like a movie genre, sci-fi. Like what we were talking before we started recording, like Western. Like,
right.
Could we think of another good game that was a Western like Red Dead Redemption was? Why aren't there more Western games that are...
Right. There are games that have Western levels.
Yeah.
Like even Mario will have Western levels, like
right.
Gusty Galaxy. But whatever. There are Western levels, Kirby...
But like a true down-to-the-bone Western like Red Dead Redemption, there's really none of those. And why is that? And that's kind of an odd question. But yeah, there's really two types of genre. There's the mechanics of the gameplay, and then there's the skin of it almost, the theme and the setting. And yeah, I
agree. So I do like sci-fis a lot, I guess, as a setting, right? And I've played multiple games in that setting. I played MMOs like Star Wars, shooters like Destiny or Halo.
Yeah, or Alien Isolation I think would be in that category. Like being trapped on a spaceship is still a cool sci-fi setting,
right?
Even if you're not a fan of the horror
and
genre.
I think it sounds cool, but I'm probably not going to play it because I don't really play horror games.
Right.
So it's still going to preclude me like on those grounds. So sci-fi I think is my favorite, and I think it's because I'm always really curious to see what aspects of humanity the creator, the author, whatever, like preserves, and what parts they throw out. Like I like to see what the parallels are to like our real world, because when you create a sci-fi, you're inherently saying like these are some universal truths that I think would be in every setting, and these things aren't. And I maybe like the part of me that likes to read theology or whatever, like kind of enjoys like being like, oh, curious. I like how they kept this but not that. I like how they assume this and not that.
Extrapolating out like what, how it would
so
change over time.
it's a really fun mental exercise for me.
Okay, so you like the setting of sci-fi. Do you have a bias in type of gameplay? Like Mass Effect was a sci-fi game, but it was a third-person adventure narrative.
I think it's hard to have a really good sci-fi, and I'm not going to say impossible. You have to have some type of exploration mystery, right? Because
that's one of those components of sci-fi.
You have to have it. Yeah. You have to have kind of that Star Trek, Final Frontier. You have to have that, I wonder what's out there, what weird, crazy thing that is unheard of, and I couldn't imagine any other way. This alien experience. Yeah. Not like literally, but just the whole thing being a foreign alien thing. I think you have to have some type of adventure exploration aspect.
Right. I would agree with that.
Which Mass Effect has in a lot of ways. Yeah. Destiny has gotten better. Yeah. I thought it was going to be better than it was. It's getting there. I mean, so far Destiny 2's done a better job of that.
I think you can take that away though. Like Alien Isolation is a sci-fi survival horror, and you're not in a free world exploration type mode. I think they could have restricted down some of the Andromeda exploration, for examexample, and told a tighter story, and it still would have been a better sci-fi game.
Well, yeah.
Kind of thing. So,
Andromeda, but I don't think Andromeda suffered because of that. I think Andromeda suffered because of the lack of writing of narrative.
I do agree with you from just more of a philosophical standpoint, less of a mechanical standpoint of just, there is a component of that in sci-fi where it's wondering what's out there and exploring the next thing and all that kind of stuff, even if it's not open world or vast or whatever.
Yeah, and I would actually disagree with you about Andromeda just because I still really enjoyed terraforming and seeing how the planet was going to change and seeing what was around the next corner. Right. And if they would have taken that away, I would have been even more upset with Andromeda because the narrative was pretty weak overall. Yeah. And if they would have taken away the exploration aspect, I would have been pretty pissed about it. And I'm less likely to play Alien.
Because it's not
really, that's not really to me what I like about it. Even though it does sound really cool. I mean, I don't play those types of games.
So on the note of enjoyment, like why do we enjoy different genres of games, right? I was doing some research and I found this dude, Mark LeBlanc, not to be confused with Matt LeBlanc from the popular show Friends.
Hey, Phoebes. Yeah. Was that a good impression?
Hey, was that?
Hey,
it's like the Fonzie.
Hey, I'm Joey. Hey. All right, whatever. I can't do.
Anyway, he's an educator and designer, but he came up with this thing that was like the 8 kinds of fun that games are designed around. I thought this was pretty interesting. So one of them is sensation, game as a sense pleasure, games that evoke emotion in a player, be it sound, visuals, controller rumble, visual effects. And so he cites are the examples given. This is on Wikipedia, so anyone can go look at this. But Dead Space, Dance Dance Revolution, Candy Crush Saga. You enjoy the sensory experience of all the crap that's coming at you from the video game, right? The other one was fantasy, game as make-believe, that it's the value you get out of a video game is escapism, which is kind of interesting. So I think you lean a little bit more that way with fantasy stuff than I do. The other one is narrative, telling a good story, which is like 80% of the games I play. I'm interested in like the story and the characters. And the challenge, is it hard and is it like a challenge to overcome? I think puzzle games and that kind of thing, like Dark Souls, right? Everyone talks about how hard it is and memorizing the patterns and that kind of stuff. Fellowship, that games are a social outlet. So Destiny, right, is like one of the ones that does this really well amongst other things.
MMOs can be really good about that too. Like overcoming something great, but you have to do it
together. Yeah. And that there's social spaces and that there's chat and there's voice chat and stuff. So, but discovery is one of them, which is what you're saying with sci-fi, the sense of exploring these vast new worlds. Expressionism, so like self-discovery, self-expression, and then submission, which I thought was kind of weird, but it means farming and grinding. So games like Farmville or my shame game,
Stardew Valley.
Yeah,
don't act like you don't remember it.
I've forgotten it now.
Sure, you have.
But I thought that was kind of interesting that in terms of genres, I think like once you start to dig down and define what genres you tend to gravitate toward and like why these mechanics, why this setting, it does seem to come down to like one of these types of fun, right? Like you immediately went to discovery with sci-fi.
Yeah, so I think the way I think about, I think more about genres like probably more from less about mechanics, though maybe I should. I think about it more from like a setting. Yeah. What kind of game is it? And then the way GameStop broke them down, I'll just go through them real quick. It's more like a function, like what you were saying, like how it's actually played. So if you just go to GameStop.com and we're looking up games, they have action, which is just crazy broad because I just brought up a page with action games on it. They had GTA, Uncharted, Disney Infinity, the toy game, Life is Strange, and like all over the place.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't think Disney Infinity and Grand Theft Auto, like I wouldn't put those in the same genre, but
Well, and some people use action and adventure really interchangeably, and then some people like draw clear lines and like this is action, this is adventure.
right. And Google survey came up the other day on my phone and asked me what type of games I like.
Yeah.
And of the genres, it was like sports, racing, shooter, and action adventure.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I guess action adventure.
Where's
'cause-
RPG? Where's like
Yeah, there was no RPG in there. There was no, and I was like, I guess action adventure because it's like this grab bag for everything else. Even though I do enjoy shooters, I wouldn't say it's I wouldn't just say the new Call of Duty is out, the new Battlefield is out. Like I need that setting. So anyway, action adventure is one genre. Sports is another one. Role playing, so GameStop does cover RPGs, or at least role playing. Shooters, fighting, your favorite. Simulation, which I think is more like, I think they would consider like Stardew Valley or Sims or whatever. Music and party was one category. Strategy, casual, which I think was more like mobile gaming. It was, I don't know. And then they had like actual puzzles and card games, like physical. Those were, so that was theirs. But as you can tell, those are purely based on function.
Right.
And I don't play games just purely on a new RPG is out.
Right.
Let's see what it is. You know what I mean? Like I have to be sold more than that. I have to know what
character and story.
Like what's going on in this RPG? Why should I play it?
Yeah. Let's take Destiny. It would get categorized as a shooter, right? But we've talked about this in the past. But it really, there is a leveling system. There's a loot system. There's a lot of RPG components to it.
Right.
The Division is the same.
Borderlands
is
not that you brought anything up from Borderlands, but Borderlands. Like there's skill trees, especially in like 2 onward. There's a lot more diversity.
And even in racing games, like it wasn't always that way. You would unlock a car and you'd get to drive that car. But now there's like you can unlock gear by performing a certain thing. Those are RPG like elements. So it's I don't know. It's hard to define genre now. I think as games are looking for ways to be new and original and creative, the lines aren't clean as they maybe possibly were once upon a time.
So now that we've done a little bit more research in the genres, what do you think, which of these like sounds more like you, especially like using like the polls, the different categories of pleasure, enjoyment, whatever?
Yeah, I think that framework, I mean, you would never see that on, why do you play games for sensory pleasure? Like
Amazon has pleasure games.
That's a whole different category. Yeah. I like the framework of like the kinds of fun and like why you breaking it down on why you play games. And that's like probably some more toward hardcore gamer nerd level stuff of really analyzing your own motivations for why you play certain games and not others and that kind of thing.
And like we've touched on that some in past episodes.
Yeah, but you would never see that like on a list of here's the genres of games. But to me, the narrowing down on like the reasons why and the emotional needs those games fulfill and categorizing them that way to me is like a much smarter, I think it's a more accurate way to categorize games.
But you still said on that 20 questions episode that you do like post-apocalyptic games, even though there is a like flooding of the market on it. But what do you think? Is there an inherent...
So as a setting,
is there an inherent thread that the ones you like have in common? Is there something from that list that you think that The Last of Us or The Division...
Yeah, and I think I may have said this before, but what I like about the post-apocalyptic genre isn't just like the gore of zombies or like the violence or anything like that, although it does tend to carry that with it. What I like about it is it's a very like stripped down, no frills. It does like The Walking Dead, right? I've heard a lot of jokes about how it's mostly like a soap opera that happens to have zombies, right?
Yeah.
I like that. It's a good backdrop for like stripping down like all of the frills of society and just getting down to the meat of who are these people, what are their motivations, what drives them, given no other options, what kind of choices will people make, and like I think I like that rawness of
Kirkman when he was writing it, because I was reading the graphic novels for a while, and like I think it was right before the show started. I read an interview with him where he said that's what he wanted.
Yeah,
like he wanted it to be more of a soap opera. Yeah. With a zombie backdrop. Yeah, right. I mean, he didn't really want to focus on that aspect. He kind of wanted exactly what you're saying.
And like the zombies, they almost serve as just this always. It's a backdrop, right? Like it's this always threatening doom that's coming down upon everyone. And what kind of choices do they make in light of their lives always being in danger, right? Like that's a cool character exploration experiment. Like if you take a look at a show like Last Man on Earth, where there's not really any villains, and it's funny and that kind of stuff. That show's good. I like that show. It's funny. It's technically post-apocalyptic, but without that backdrop of like that weight of an impending doom forcing down upon them, it's sort of flat, you know? And so I think having something like that, like a virus or zombies or whatever, like it's a good thing that squeezes the juice out of like characters and stories and human motivation.
Not to be alarming, but I feel like that's like what a supervillain would say, like right before he nukes the Earth.
Like, let's put 6 people on an island.
And I think there's an episode of Firefly where the villain is like torturing Captain Mal to get at who's the real Mal?
Yeah.
But that's cool, man. I'm glad you...
So maybe that's why it comes with violence and evil and darkness. But
yeah, but I mean, I do agree with you, actually. I mean, it's cool. It does make you evaluate character differently, right? And it makes you... There's something almost, the risk of sounding like a villain, pure about that, right?
Well, and I think that's part of why The Last of Us was so great, was like this guy who was a dad got totally stripped down to absolutely nothing. And then he has this little glimmer of hope that he can have back what he lost, and what kind of choices does he make, and how far will he go to get that back. That's what I think you needed, that post-apocalyptic doom to like squeeze that and break him down to really reveal some of those cool character components.
But why do you think there's such a flood then now of these post-apocalyptic games? Do you think it's become like a sellout? Like, well, this is an easy way to get at that, so let's just do it.
I think there are a ton of games that are just like zombies are cool, let's make a zombie game. And there are games that are mechanically good, right? Like I could not get into Dead Rising, but for me, being locked in a mall and making a chainsaw
I couldn't get
mop
into it
either, with a clown wig on it that's not why I like that genre at all. And I know it was popular and a lot of people liked it.
You know what's interesting about what you're saying? I feel like Left 4 Dead did that, but with players. So, like, it didn't need a narrative, right?
Yeah.
But we became that.
Yeah.
We as people, like, that frantic, like, oh God,
yeah,
do I save my partner?
You had to make a choice, like, are they overrun and do I have to leave? It was like the opening of 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later. The one where he leaves his
28
wife.
weeks later.
It forced you into this position where you had to make these really hard life and death decisions about do you save your friend or not?
And they were pretty panic-inducing.
Yeah.
Like, it was pretty scary.
Yeah.
And there were moments where you kind of looked at your friend like, did you seriously just leave me to die? Like, you fucking asshole.
But that is if you look at like a lot of other games where it's like you're the hero and now you save this and whatever, and like you get more powerful as things go on, and then you get powerful enough to beat the bad guy and then you win the day. I think that's the draw to that genre, to survival horror and to post-apocalyptic anything. It strips all of that away and you have limited resources, all the frills are gone. Now what do you do?
Yeah, so do you think most gamers evaluate their gameplay based on like GameStop's categories? Like, do you think people are like, well, you still hear people say like, well, I really like shooters, or like sports games,
right?
I've never heard somebody be like, I like music party games.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could.
A few people, but they're rare, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like as gamers, we don't look at it entirely that way. There's a lot of people who play Destiny that wouldn't probably have traditionally played shooters, but they were
play
so
Destiny
attracted.
That traditionally wouldn't have played an MMORPG.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like some games like that, especially as these games are starting to blend those, are like trying to find footing with both crowds, which is smart, but I think a challenge.
Right.
I think that's maybe why some of these games have also fallen on their face.
Right.
Because they're trying to do too much.
Right.
Do you think that's going to continue? Do you think we're going to keep seeing some of that mushing together?
I think they have to. I mean, there's like purists. Like Super Meat Boy is a pretty good example of just a very purist platform, and the story's basically a Mario ripoff, and they put a new skin on it, and it's
unlike Mega Man 10 and like the...
Yeah, so I think there will be like pockets of indie stuff that were like, I grew up playing this, and I love this old school genre that's this pure genre, and I wanted to make this thing. But I think to be original and to be creative, I think the gaming industry has to like keep evolving and meshing together different genres.
I don't know if this is an overstatement, but it is kind of what we're asking for as society, right? Like with our entertainment.
Right.
Like how many pure, dramedy has become a thing, rom-comedy,
Right.
like there's all these like mashing up of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't always like it.
Yeah.
Like I kind of, some shows I'm like, ugh, should
Well,
I be laughing or crying?
Like Last Man on Earth, it is a post-apocalyptic mixed with comedy, mixed with like, it's a very weird mashup.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I like it, but it's as a whole, it seems like we're satisfied with that and we want more of it.
Right.
So for better or worse, I think we're going to keep seeing this like mashing up.
It is an evolution. Like they like these genres are like starting to breed together, and weird things are coming out of it, and some of them die, then some of them thrive.
I think you're right. If we have time, do you have a least favorite? Let's say not setting, because we've talked about that some. Oh no, I guess I think I can answer this for you. What's your least favorite setting?
Okay.
Not necessarily mechanic. We know fighting is your least. So let's say what's your least favorite setting, if you can, if you think you can come up with a.
Dang, dude, I didn't know you were gonna ask me that.
I didn't know I was gonna ask you that until just now either. I don't like simulation type settings. So if it's something that's actually pretty close to reality, I almost always hate it. Probably Uncharted is a good exception because it's still larger than life. They still manage to capture that, even though these are based on real places or are real places.
Even if you're in a downtown city, you're in a clock tower that's falling apart.
Right. Like, it's still so like breathtaking that but in general, I don't like urban, rural. Maybe that's why I hate like sim games or something, because I cannot stand anything that looks like my real life. Not because I hate my real life. I love my life, but I cannot stand it in a video game.
I wouldn't have picked that out, but I think I do kind of agree with that, because like games like GTA or Watch Dogs or like any of those, like I played them and they were like okay, they had like a little bit of novelty value to them, but yeah, they really weren't my cup of tea. You know what just popped into my head, and I didn't know this about myself until you asked me that? I hate when you're a miniature thing in a real world. I hate it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Even though we talked about Army Men, how we like that.
No, so it was good because it was like still set in the sand. And then they had one later that came, so the very first one, it was still set in like...
It was like in forests.
It was in forests and in sand and stuff like that. And when they took it to where like you were fighting in a kid's room or in someone's kitchen, I left the franchise. I hate it. I could not stand it.
So getting shrunk really bugs you.
Yeah. I don't know if I play enough games like that to have been like at the top of my mind or whatever.
Hey,
but now that I think about it, like...
Gut instinct answer.
Yeah. I like, okay, so cool, I'm playing on a spatula. I don't get it.
I still have to go cook breakfast.
I want to see a breathtaking vista on like a moon of Saturn or something like that. Something I'm not going to see in my normal life. Thank you very much.
That's awesome.
Thank you for listening to Save Every Universe. If you enjoyed this episode, please go give us money, lots of money, at patreon.com/saveeveryuniverse.